Okay, so we are continuing on the book of Ezekiel. We have finished through the first 7 chapters of Ezekiel, and we have seen Ezekiel's first batch, or we've seen an account of Ezekiel's first batch of visions, and we have read about him getting his first set of instructions from God. He is to minister to the people there in exile with him in Babylon, and he is to demonstrate visibly various things that represent different aspects of what's going to happen to Jerusalem. He built some sort of set that represented Jerusalem, and he is acting out the siege on Jerusalem with this set he's built, and he is lying on his side and cooking, every day, or at least for a portion of each day, for 430 days to represent having the sin of Israel and Judah laid upon him. Now, he himself is not bearing Israel and Judah's sin, obviously. This is all a visual representation, a demonstration of a principle that God wants to impress upon the people. And he was making food a certain way, and he was making, siege time ration foods. And that was his first batch of instructions and the message he was to speak to the people to go along with that. Now in Ezekiel 8, about a year later, we get another batch of instructions. In the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day, so about a year, let's see here, the opening vision in chapter 1 is the 5th year of the exile, the 4th month on the 5th day. It's not the 6th year of the exile, the 6th month on the 5th day. So about 14 months later, or more than a year later. Well, remember, he's dating all of these events around the year of the exile of King Jehoiachin, who was one of the captives taken to Babylon along with Ezekiel. Ezekiel was taken along with that wave of deportations, and that's how he's dating his book. So this is the 6th year of their exile. In the 6th month on the 5th day, while I was sitting in my house, so he had a house of some kind, and the elders of Judah were sitting there with me, or sitting before me. So they came to his house. These are the elders of the people that were in exile in Babylon with him, and they're there in his house, apparently there to listen to him. The hand of the sovereign Lord came upon me there. I looked, and I saw a figure like that of a man. From what appeared to be his waist down, he was like fire. And from there up, his appearance was as bright as glowing metal. He stretched out what looked like a hand, and took me by the hair of my head. So he's reaching out to grab Ezekiel and take him somewhere. The Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and in visions of God, he took me to Jerusalem. So Ezekiel's body is still there in his house in Babylon. Somehow or another, though, he is being given a vision of what's going on in Jerusalem. This isn't, I think, a literal... I don't think he is literally being taken to Jerusalem in some, spirit form and he's seeing a vision. I don't think... I said earlier how this book is kind of like an ancient version of a cable news network where you have footage from all around the world at any given time. And there is some truth to that, but I don't think Ezekiel is necessarily seeing the literal events in Jerusalem like we would if we were watching a drone footage of what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now or something like that. I don't think so. I think what he's seeing is a vision depicting what's really going on there, even if superficially it's not visibly going on. But I don't really know. I've never had a vision like this, so I don't know what this experience is like. Very few people have ever had visions like this. And most of the ones who had wrote it down, and it became what we had today. I don't know what it's like to have this sort of experience. In the end, I can't really tell you exactly what it's like. All I can tell you is what Ezekiel wrote about it. I've never had that experience myself, so I can't explain it to you firsthand. At any rate, somehow or another, he is being given a vision of Jerusalem while his body is still in Babylon. In the entrance to the north gate of the inner court, where the idol... Wait, okay, excuse me. The Spirit lifted me up between heaven and earth, and in visions of God he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance, the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. Doesn't say exactly what it is, but there's some sort of idol there. Now, we've had kings put idols in the temple before. Remember King Ahaz, the guy who wanted to make an alliance with Assyria? He moved God's altar, I think, to the north side of the temple, and put his own altar that he got from Damascus, or an altar he designed after what he saw, and he had that made and put where the God's altar should be. The north side was the weak side. Okay, the east side is the primary side. In ancient directions, in ancient navigation thinking, and this is true in the Bible, the east side is the dominant side. And you orient yourself facing the east. We saw that back with the tabernacle. It was always set up to be facing the east. We saw it with the temple. It was also facing east. Even their directions were their terms for things were based on facing east. Like if you're facing east, to the right is your south, and to the left is the north. And of course, your left side is your weak side. So the north side is the weak side. The north side was also where Israel's enemies came from most of the time, unless they were Egypt, because they couldn't come from the west since there was a sea there. They couldn't come from the east since there was a desert there. Egypt did come from the south, but every other enemy of Israel came from the north. So the north side is the weak side. Anyway, so right now he's at the north side. There's some kind of an idol there. And there before me was the glory of the God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. So he's seeing the throne and the cherubim. So he'll finally identify them as cherubim a little bit later here. But he's seeing the living creatures and the wheels and the throne and chariot and all that. He's seeing that again. Then he said to me, Son of man, look toward the north. So I looked. And in the entrance north of the gate of the altar, I saw this idol of jealousy. And he said to me, Son of man, or human, do you see what they are doing? The utterly detestable things the house of Israel is doing here. Things that will drive me far from my sanctuary. But you will see things that are even more detestable. So this is just an outer layer of the detestable nature of their practices. We've got a lot more to go through. Then he brought me to the entrance of the court. So we're getting deeper into the temple here. I looked, and I saw a hole in the wall. He said to me, Son of man, now dig into the wall. So I dug into the wall, and I saw a doorway there. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked and detestable things they are doing. So I went in and looked. So we're figuratively spying on these people. We are seeing them as they don't want us to see them. They're hiding. They're doing these things in secret, and so we're sneaking in by digging them through a hole in the wall and seeing them when they don't want to be seen. So I went in and looked, and I saw portrayed all over the walls all kinds of crawling things and detestable animals and all the idols of the house of Israel. So in other words, they had idols on their walls. They had images of idols on their walls. In front of them stood 70 elders of the house of Israel, and Jazaniah, son of Shaphan, was standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, a pan, and a fragrant cloud of incense was right. That stands for prayers. Incense stands for prayers. So these are the 70 people, the 70 elders, the cream of the crop of Israel, of Judah, I should say. And they were standing there in front of the images of these idols, these crawling things, these detestable images. And they had their fire pans in their hands, and they were offering incense prayers to these images. The 70 elders concept goes all the way back to Exodus, when they're first camped around Mount Sinai, and after Moses goes up, and gets the first batch of laws. In Exodus 24, the Lord says to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu," those are Aaron's sons, "and 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance. Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others must not come near, and the people must not come up with them." So they went up. So they had these 70 elders that went up there. A few verses down, verse 9, "Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of sapphire, as clear as the sky itself." So there again is this crystal sheet of glass or whatever it is that we consistently see portrayed whenever we see God pictured on his throne. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank. So there were 70 elders right from the beginning. They've always had the concept of a group of 70 elders. And here they are in Ezekiel, and they're not worshiping God. They're not eating and drinking with God. They are bowing down to these detestable images of these animals and these other crawling things that they have built into the, portrayed on the walls of the temple. He said to me, "Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his own idol?" So this is not a literal picture of what they're literally doing in Jerusalem at that moment in time. Ezekiel is not being shown through, like, via a drone camera or satellite camera, or like an image of exactly what is going on in Jerusalem at that moment in time, but he's seeing a vision of what is going on really in the hearts of the people in Jerusalem. The Lord, okay, "Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his own idol? They say, 'The Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land.'" Again, he said. So they think that it's okay. They think they're going to get away with it. Again, he said, "You will see them doing things that are even more detestable." Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw women sitting there, mourning for Tammuz. That is a goddess of I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but the idea of Tammuz is that this is one of those underworld gods. You've heard of the concept before with different other stories that appear in other kinds of mythological accounts, where a god has to enter the underworld and is gone for a year. That's where the idea that's often used to explain the cycle of the seasons. Like the goddess of nature or fertility or whatever has to go into the underworld for 6 months of the year for some reason or another, and so the women are weeping because of that. That's basically, I don't know exactly where Tammuz comes from or what culture Tammuz is from, but that's the same idea. You have a god or goddess that has to go into the underworld for a period of time. So there's a ritual involved with mourning, this process that occurs every year. So the women here are mourning for Tammuz. And we saw it in Jeremiah, and we'll see it again in Ezekiel. There was an idea of professional mourners, mostly women, who would weep and wail, and that was like their job. Like they would be called to go to funerals and things like that, and set the tone for the public by leading the public in mourning. That's probably who these women are. So these women are setting the tone for at least the rest of the women in the city to mourn for Tammuz and not mourn for the loss of holiness in front of God or anything like that. He said to me, "Do you see this, son of man? You will see things that are even more detestable than this." He then brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord. And there, at the entrance to the temple, so this is right there in the thick of things, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs to the temple of the Lord, and their faces turned toward the east. And they were bowing down to the sun in the east. He said to me, Have you seen this, son of man? Is it a trivial matter for the house of Judah to do the detestable things they are doing here? Must they also fill the land with violence and continually provoke me to anger? Look at them putting the branch to their nose. I have no idea what that means. It's some sort of figure of speech that was common, or at least understood, in Ezekiel's day, but I have no idea what that means, and I don't think you do either. Look at them putting the branch to their nose. Therefore I will deal with them in anger. I will not look on them with pity or spare them. Although they shout out in my ears, I will not listen to them. So they have turned their backs to God. They have turned their faces away from God. They're worshiping the sun. They're worshiping Tammuz. They're worshiping the creepy crawly things and anything else they can worship. Anything other than God. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a lizard. It could be a snake. It could be any other kind of reptile or crawling thing. It could be Tammuz. It could be the sun. Doesn't matter what it is. As long as it's not God, they'll worship anything. As long as it's not God. And hey, we do the same thing today. You know, this is a vision. Okay, now I'm sure that in this day and time they really did have rituals where they bow down to the sun. I'm sure they did. But Ezekiel is not actually seeing them perform this ritual physically and literally. And we'll find out later on when we talk to these. This is the people in Judah, okay? These are the people who are still in Jerusalem. But we'll find out, and they were still bowing down to their idols. We saw Jeremiah talk about that, because he's there at that time. We'll find out when Ezekiel talks about the people in exile with him in Babylon. They weren't bowing down to their idols any longer, literally. They were not literally putting idols on household shrines and bowing down to them any longer. But their hearts were still full of idolatry. And we'll read about that as we go. So we don't have to literally, physically make a structure that looks like a lion or a goat or a calf or a lizard or a snake or whatever, and put it on a shrine or above a fireplace or something in our house, and then literally get on our knees and bow down. We don't have to do that. We don't have to take it that far. Some people might, but we don't have to do it that way. We can still have our idols in our hearts, though. And we're going to find that point illustrated later in the book of Ezekiel, when Ezekiel talks not about the people in Jerusalem who were literally bowing down to idols, but the people in Ezekiel in his day with him in Babylon, who were no longer literally bowing to idols, but were still had their idols in their hearts. They still hadn't given them up. And that's what we can do too. I doubt there's very many of us who have literally bowed down to a stone statue or a wooden pole. But I do think there's plenty of us who have bent the knee to something or another at some point in our lives and made that our guiding focus and the goal of our lives, and it shouldn't have been.